How do you build momentum for project-based learning with your staff so that it's not a top-down initiative? How are you going to invite other teachers to join you as a trailblazer in PBL? Well, PBL Simplified the book just hit bookshelves across the country yesterday. The book is out there in the world. It's ready for you. Each chapter has a set of online resources to help you and your staff start building PBL while you learn together. That means after I talk about group contracts in the book, there's a link that will take you to a place where you can grab group contracts and start making them. So it's not just a book and you read it and you go do. It's a book that you read and you do at the same time. So go out and order your copy of PBL Simplified wherever it is that you buy your books. Are your teachers fighting apathy in their classrooms? Are your teachers burned out and leaving your school? Are you losing your passion for the work? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you are in the right place. I'm Ryan Stoyer, and this is PBL Simplified Podcast, dedicated to equipping you to be a visionary leader who's committed to self-development, collaboration, and changing education. You see, managing leaders are working to get through the day or the year with as little conflict as possible. But you are a visionary leader who sees the change needed in education as a moral imperative. This has to happen. You can't stop your mission because someone's feelings might be hurt, or it's something different, or people say you're crazy, or it doesn't seem realistic. In fact, you were made for a time such as this, and I'm here to guide you down the path to fulfill your vision. Welcome, visionary leader. Today we have a PBL leadership episode. Next week we're going to have a PBL leadership guest. For guests, I'm going to be bringing you in some education experts that you say you want on the podcast. But I'm also going to bring in some folks from the business world because they can help us build our leadership capacity. So whether you're a district, building, or classroom leader, I'm going to have some things that you can learn from the business world via our guests. Do you still need to read DeFore and Marzano? Yeah, probably. But let's slow your list a bit and include some leadership podcasts or leadership books. So I'm going to bring those books to you in the Leadership Leap. I'm going to bring some of those leaders to you in the leadership guest episodes. So I think you're going to love the format. I'm excited about it for 2023, that we're opening it up and really focusing on leadership at the district, building, or classroom level, because I think that's where you really want to go. That's where your heart is you're a visionary leader who sees that things could be bigger and probably better. So today we're going to have a need to know around, do I have to pay for community partners? The Leadership Leap is going to cover the book Discipline and Destiny by Ryan Halliday. And the episode topic is actually achieving your goals. Looking to start your podcast and not sure where to start? Use the same podcasting service I use to edit, post, and market my podcast episodes. 5 Talents Podcasting will take your raw audio and present it to the world. All you have to do is record. And we've actually worked in a package where you can coach with me while you grow your following on your podcast or your business. Go to 5talentspodcasting.com to get started today. Our need to know for today is, do I have to pay for community partners? This need to know comes up whether it's a design day with administrators or if it's in a PBL Jumpstart with teachers. Because community partners are not a natural thing to bring into a traditional classroom. We don't bring in people from the outside. We kind of are in our own little nest in our world. And there's a positive piece to that, right? You've got this culture that you've built. And I'm going to say community partners is another positive piece that can help you build a culture of excellence and authenticity. But you do not have to pay for community partners. Whether it's the largest children's museum in the world or a local nonprofit, the outside world, industry partners want to help us in our world of education. Now, it doesn't always seem like that if you look at the news and you're saying, well, how come engineers won't come in? Well, what project-based learning does is it gives some on-ramps to those community partners. The engineer can't just show up and say, hi, I'd like to help today. What's your secretary going to say when that happens, right? So, well, we have some copies, and that engineer's going to go away and never come back because she doesn't want to come in and do copies. She wants to come in and share her expertise with your learners. And when you have an on-ramp to say, well, here's this design thinking PBL unit that we're doing. We could really use your expertise as an engineer. Now she can come in and talk to your learners, leverage her expertise and her time well, and she's happy to do that. Will it take time from her main gig? Of course it will, but she wants to do that. You say, well, don't I have to pay her for that? No, you don't. You're paying her in the experience of giving back, right? We know that when we give back or we do service somewhere, that there is that feeling of joy, of contribution. Like, that's what our community partners want. Like, that's us paying them back. So it would be pretty rare that you would have to pay for a community partner. Maybe you've got a program that you're going to buy and the community partner comes in that way. So maybe, but I don't think we've ever advocated for anyone paying for a community partner. There are a lot of people that want to come into your classroom. There are a lot of people that want to come in and help. The leadership leap today is Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Halliday. So if you're into Stoicism or if you want to get into the discipline piece, Ryan Halliday is your guy. He's got a ton of resources out there, and this is part of a new series that he's come out with. And I jumped into Discipline is Destiny for you. And it's part of the Stoic Virtues series. And let's start with a quote from the book. It gives you a good overview in this section. The people we admire most, and we'll explore in this book, Marcus Aurelius, Queen Elizabeth II, Lou Gehrig, Angela Merkel, Martin Luther King Jr., George Washington, Winston Churchill, they inspire us with their restraint and dedication. The cautionary tales of history, Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, King George IV, stun us with their self-inflicted destruction. Because each of us contains multitudes, sometimes we see both excess and restraint in the same person and can learn from both. Freedom requires discipline. Discipline gives us freedom and greatness. Your destiny is there. Will you grab the reins? And this book crushes this by bringing in some disciplines, bringing in the ideas, but then backing it up with these characters from history, if you will. And he breaks his books into 3 different parts. So part 1 is the exterior, the body, the physical. Where's your energy come from? Part 2, explore the inner domains or temperament. And then part 3 looks at the soul. And he does it through these characters that I just read through in that section at the beginning. And one big piece that you pull out of this in Discipline is Destiny is that we're going to look at our daily disciplines, right? So consistency is a superpower. He says, don't worry about setting any records, just report for duty. No excuses. And here's the irony. This is also a way to break records. Consistency is a superpower. Day-to-day willpower is incredibly rare. So he goes through the life of Lou Gehrig. Says he was a solid position player, a good hitter, but his success really was rooted in the fact that he didn't miss many days of work. You don't have to be amazing. You do always have to show up. So he goes through the life of Lou Gehrig, which is insane. He's playing with all these broken fingers, all these different issues or injuries, some of it from his upbringing. He was just a tough guy, but he saw the importance of showing up. And then you see the results from that. And how does that relate to us in education? It's the consistency, especially in words as a leader. Like one of the things we use to lead people is words, and you need to use them consistently. So what words will you say again and again and again? And you say them unabashedly, like you're not ashamed, like these are your words, right? So student empowerment, student-centered, 21st century skills, employability skills, right? Sometimes we say soft skills, all these different words. You need to pick a phrase. Pick a phrase. I say employability skills because I think the connection to the industry partners is really important. The employability for our kids is really what we're looking for in building these skills through project-based learning. So what are your words? If you look through PBL Simplified, the book that just came out yesterday, you're going to see that I use the word learners throughout the book. I don't say students. I think there's a difference between students and learners, right? Project-based learning, we want to twist, same kids sitting in the same desks, but we want to be learners, not just students that sit there passively. Again, I say employability skills. I started using this phrase this year. Like, I've picked these things specifically so I can be consistent with them. We're moving kids from being compliant to being empowered. I think that's one of our main missions. So consistency is a superpower. Find those things that you can do consistently as a leader, so you eventually become known for them. Here's another quote from the book. Almost all great leaders, great athletes, great philosophers have been tough. They've been able to endure. That's what it takes. Sacrifices, pushing through frustrations, pushing through criticisms and loneliness, pushing through the pain. It might not be physical pain for us as leaders, right? You might report to work with a tie and be in an office that has, an HVAC system, but leadership's lonely. Right? There's criticisms. Where do you go when you really step out? And that's where the discipline starts to take over. That's where you have to know that discipline equals destiny. That's how you achieve your goals, which is our main topic for today. He also gets to talk about John Wooden, who is one of my favorites as an Indiana basketball guy. And he talks about how you dominate the fundamentals, right? The famous story, if you grew up in Indiana and you played any kind of basketball, your coach told you the story or tried to do it. Like John Wooden would talk about, this is how you put your socks on. This is how you lace up your shoes. Because if you don't put your socks on right, you can have a blister, because you didn't put your socks on right, which then affects how you're dribbling and then how you run differently, and then you have a bigger injury later on, and that affects the whole team. So he talks about how we have to dominate the fundamentals. What does that mean for you? It might mean that you set aside time to read, to make sure that you're hitting your leadership goals, that you're listening to this podcast to up your leadership game, that you go into 3 classrooms every day, whatever your number is. But your discipline is that no matter how busy you are, no matter how urgent things are, you have a consistency and a discipline for the fundamentals. The fundamentals are you need to be in classrooms every single day. How do you do that? Those principals, those building leaders that do that are dominating. They know that the fundamentals are important. Oh, this one's so connected. And again, he uses so many great examples. I've got to go a little quicker, but even the strongest will suffer. That's what being a pro is about, treating winning or losing as a chance to get right back at it, to come back to your groove and stay in it, because that's where you're happiest, most in control, and most connected. So you will have dips in your work, you will have bad days. It's actually going to be another leadership leap coming up. I'm preparing right now. This is a common theme. High flyers don't have perfect days. They have bad days, but that trough is not as low. They know how to get back on the horse. It doesn't last as long. The trough isn't as deep and it's not as long. We know, bad day, boom, bounce right back the next day. Oh, things are getting bad. I already ate half a bag of chips. Don't finish the bag of chips, right? Like high flyers know you just stop, you put the chips away, and you get back at it, right? So however that relates to your work, you will suffer, but it's how do you get back at it? How do you get back in your sweet spot? So you just do the work. Like this year, Magnify Learning is going to 3 times the content that we put out. That's going to be hard, right? That's going to take work, but it's worth the work. So you just stand up, you do the work. One more, perseverance. Not just weathering a storm or two, but something beyond that. As anyone who has had a bad year or decade or worse, but it is in the struggle, you are beset by difficulties and pain and doubt, who refuse to give up, who refuse to stop trying. This is more than courage. They have conquered themselves in body and mind, even if those are precisely the things working so hard against them. We must look to them as heroes. And here, I absolutely love it because it was a story that I didn't really expect in here, and it was Queen Elizabeth II. And some of the things that she did, she had tea with over 1 million people during her time. 1 million people, just boom, 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 because that was part of her job. Right? That's what she did. Is it, like, for me, that sounds awful. Like, that would take an enormous amount of discipline to just be that social, that social, that social, that social. But she knew that was part of her job. There were several attacks on her life, and she just took them in stride. There's one where she was on a horse, and somebody came with an actual revolver and, took 6 shots, it said. And she just stood there poised, or sat on her horse poised. She didn't scream. She didn't worry. That was her job. One time somebody broke into her room. in the middle of the night. It's like, hey, security, where were you guys? But she just talked to the guy until security came. Like, just worked with them. That's what she does. She was poised. She had perseverance. Over decades, she did this again and again and again. So in the closing chapter, it says, we are here to actually get better, trying to answer our own call, to make the Herculean choice over ourselves, today, tomorrow, and every moment. Sure, there's a relationship between study and practice, but at some point, the rubber meets the road. We contemplate truth, and then we have to act on it. Discipline is destiny. Your daily habits are important. Destiny equals freedom. Our main episode today is actually achieving your goals. In the last leadership episode, we set goals. We used Dan Miller's formula with a combination of James Clear from Atomic Habits to set those goals. But now, how do you actually achieve them? If you're anything like me, you've got journal after journal of very exciting goals that you've set, but maybe you didn't reach them. I've done that for a long time, and I'm done with that. So you look at some of the work from the Leadership Leap, from Discipline is Destiny. Destiny is that your daily habits have to lead towards your goals. And the discipline to do those is really what gets you there in the end. It's putting those goals before you, saying, hey, what I'm doing today, does that lead towards my goals? Yes, do them. No, you don't do those things. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So if you looked in the other episode, you'll see that step 1 is to set your goals. It was episode 106. And then step 2, you're going to prioritize your goals, because not all goals are created equal. Step 3, you're going to build habits to move you towards those goals. So how do you prioritize your goals? Because when you first set goals, you're a high achiever. You want to do everything. You want to be the best mom on the planet. You want to be the best principal on the planet. You want to exercise every single day. You're going to dominate your golf league. You're going to do all these different things. But some of those likely go against each other. Or if you try to hit 100 goals, you're not going to hit any. So how do you filter these? Let me give you 3 things. First, you're going to eliminate some of these ideas. Some you're going to automate, and some you're going to delegate. This is your daily life. So you look at everything you do in a day and start to say what lines up to my goals and what does not. If it does not align to your goals, or it's not something you should be doing, you need to eliminate it. Can I tell you, I worked with a high-flying principal. She'd built her own school. She's operating at a very high level. And then as I was coaching her and walking through this, it turns out she was printing report cards. Wait a minute. Surely somebody else can do that. Like, surely one of your goals isn't to print report cards, right? So we eliminated that from her job. Technically, I suppose we delegated it because it has to happen, but we eliminated it from her list of things to do right away. And like when we called it out, it was really easy to see that somebody else can go press that button, report back. Here's the report cards. We had 2 errors, whatever, those things that have to happen, but eliminating those things that you do not have to do. Then you can automate. I'm going to guess that you get more than 4 emails a day, right? And yeah, so you should laugh right there, right? So the average C-suite gets like 200 emails a day. You've got to filter some of those. Now, depending on your structure, maybe you've got a secretary that can do that. Maybe not. Maybe you need to automate some of those things with your folders. Maybe you need to set aside time. Somehow you need to automate the process of your email, because email will suck the life out of you. It takes your time. You can't have email up all the time. It should not be a communication tool for urgent things. You need to create good systems. My system is I look at email in the morning for 20 minutes, and then my staff, or those close to me that I'm coaching, know that if it's urgent, you're just going to call. If it's a little less urgent, you might text. But I don't allow anything urgent in my email. If somebody sends me something urgent, I'll let them know. Like, hey, I wish you would have texted me about this. So then in my email, I know that there's nothing urgent for the day. But you have to set up that structure. You have to automate that. You have to communicate that clearly. And then you need to communicate why. The why is that if I have to check my email all day, I will hit rabbit trails. I will go down an avenue that's not the deep, most important work. So we can't do that. I cannot do that. I know as a leader, that's not how I operate best. So this is going to be my process. If you want me to get back to you within 4 hours, you need to call me, because I'm not going to check my email again until this afternoon. So maybe you set 1, 2, 3 times throughout the day that you check your email. Sounds impossible, but you want to get as close as you can to that. Maybe you start with 6 times a day and whittle it down to 4. But it's possible. You need to automate it so that you're doing those things that build up towards your goal, because this is how you actually achieve your goals in 2023. The third thing you have to do is to delegate. Now, you're likely doing some things on your list that you are proficient at. Or maybe you're passionate about it, but you're not really good at it. You need to be both. That's all you should do. So let's say you do the weekly newsletter. And you say, well, I need to do the weekly newsletter. I'm the leader. I can't stand it, but I know I'm supposed to do it. I'm not even really good at it. It takes me 3 hours. What if you had somebody that helped bring you content so that you were just plugging things in? Is that okay? Yes, that's okay. Right? You can delegate those portions that you're not as good at. Like, you should say that. Do you still add a personal touch? Yeah, you can still add a personal touch, but let somebody help you put those blocks in. Maybe it's another teacher. Maybe it's me. Like, put in the ask now. Like, if you like that, I've had this really great idea of creating some content for principals so you can put it in the weekly newsletter. If there's a need for that, we'll try to help fulfill that. You got to delegate some of these things, though. So that's one example of how you get your goals done. You set them, you prioritize them, you build habits, and then you need to have a filter for what comes across your desk. Can I give you another one that's going to be hard for you? But this is how, again, the title of this main episode is how you actually achieve your goals. So you can do what everybody else does and write them down and then forget about them. But if you actually want to achieve your goals, you need to carve out time for deep work. The open door policy is overrated. Open door policy is overrated, and it doesn't help you get deep work done. You need to have a section of your time on your calendar that is blocked out to do deep work. There's 2 ways to do this to get you started. The first is you just start on Tuesday from 8:30 to 9:30. You're going to close your door, and you let somebody know that your door's closed right now. You're going to be doing deep work. It's really important for the school, and you need to get this done. To only interrupt you if there's a really big fight, the superintendent's here, or Elon Musk showed up at the door. So, like, you define what those things are. But you set aside that time and just see how much work you get done. Just try it once. Once you do that, you'll start bringing it into every day, and you'll just have deep work time from 9:30 to 10:30, whatever it is, and people will know. Like right now, you have an open door policy, so anybody just shows up and says, hey, can I do a field trip? But if you had a closed door policy, there's an hour where you aren't disrupted from deep work, they would just come at 11:30 and say, hey, can we do a field trip? Like, they don't mind. They don't know that they're interrupting some deep work that you're doing. Now, the other way to do this is to schedule your deep work time on your calendar. So if you've got a grant that you want to work on, or a visionary document that you're working on, you put it on your calendar as if it's a meeting. You say from noon to 1, I've got a visionary planning meeting. I cannot be bothered. Just as if you had the assistant superintendent in there, right? The same thing would happen if it was 12 to 1, you're meeting with the assistant superintendent. People are only going to knock on your door if it's really important. Same thing, that time's blocked out. And what begins to happen as you put these things on your calendar is somebody will say, hey, can we meet from noon to 1 tomorrow? And you need the discipline, because discipline is destiny, to say, you know what, that time block's filled for me right now. Is there another time we could meet? And the other person will say, sure, no problem. Let's find a different time. And now what just happened is, 1, you saved that deep work time, so you're actually going to get good, important work done for your building and your vision. But 2, you've just said to yourself that your time is important, that deep work time is worth defending. And when you defend your time to achieve your goals, you actually achieve your goals. Once it becomes part of the process, it's just how you operate, and nobody even knows any different, right? Like right now, they just work with the system you've given them. You've likely just inherited a system, or you have a system that doesn't have discipline in it. So you need to put some parameters and borders around it. You can start slowly or just implement it and say, this is how we do that. As you move through, I've got 2 more ideas for you. You need to continually prioritize your work. Let me give you some questions to ask yourself. When work comes across your desk, you've got to decide, is what you thought was important actually important? So something comes across your desk, typically you think this is important. Is it actually important? Or is it really important? Could it wait till tomorrow? Should it be interrupting what you're doing now? Is this task actually 4 tasks? I'm going to show you what I use the Ivy Lee method for my to-do list of major things to get done. And sometimes I'll put on there, for instance, this episode 113. I'll just put record episode 113. Well, I actually have to plan it. I've got a ton of research that I do beforehand. I need to create the outline. There's actually 4 steps within that one step. So then whenever I go, record episode 113, I think, man, I don't have time for that. But do I have time to do some of the research? Yes. So if you start to write your to-do list out with the tasks actually as they truly are, they're much easier to knock out and you actually achieve your goals. Because some tasks will likely take less time than you think. But it just feels big. So sometimes you just need to give it 20 minutes. Here's this big grant proposal. Well, you know what? Carve out 20 minutes to look at it and see what it really needs to do. You might find out in 20 minutes you don't even want to go after it because it's way more work than you want, or it takes you in a different direction. But sometimes you just keep putting it off because you need more time. Well, give it 20 minutes. See what happens. I use the Ivy Lee method. So on my iPad, I use GoodNotes, and I list 6 things, and they go on the top of the sheet. These are the biggest things that I need to do. And the way it works is I'm not allowed to work on the second item on my list until I get the first one done. Well, that's a big deal for me because I like to jump to new things. I'm an innovator. I like the change in different things. So when the discipline for me is, I've got my list right in front of me right now, is can I cross off 1? 3 sounds like more fun right now. Nope, you got to do 1, you got to do 2, and it actually makes me more motivated to do 1 and 2 because I want to get to 3. And if I don't get those 6 done, they go over to the next day. And my 6 change until they get crossed off. Now, once I do 1 and 2, I rewrite the list. Now, number 3 is number 1, and I get to add a few things. But until then, they sit in an extra hopper over here in a different folder that I don't work with until they can make the actual list. Now, can you only have 6 things in a day? Probably not. So what I do is I take my paper and I just put it in half on my iPad, put a line through it, and then I list all the busy work or the noise that has to happen in a day at the bottom. So what it does though is if I have a free moment or I'm going to carve out a free moment, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm not wasting time wondering what I should be doing with this time. It's exactly there, and I still have the noise that has to happen each day, but I also have the important stuff front and center that I see every single day. So that's the Ivy Lee method. I'm going to use it for 2023. I'll continue to let you know how you like it. So far, I absolutely love it. It's focused me on my deep work. It helps me prioritize because I have to decide what's going to be number 1, number 2, number 3. And some things just get crossed off or moved down because they're not as important. So it's forcing me to prioritize what's the most important thing for me so that I can actually achieve my goal. Last thought comes from Discipline is Destiny, is when you commit to a process, the works get done, and then when the work gets done, you love the process. So then you just work the process, work the process, work the process. So what do you need to do today? Go to the show notes, go buy Discipline is Destiny. Share your goal with me. I'd love to know what your goal is. I'd love to help you with that goal. You can email it to me. You can text it to me. You can put it in Ask Ryan, wherever you want to put it. Let me know what it is. I'd love to share it with you. I'd love to be on that journey with you. Next week, we have a PBL Leadership guest episode. We're bringing in my friend and leadership coach, Michael McGreevy. Michael works with top leaders just like you and their teams. He creates opportunities to the work from your best selves, from your passion areas. Michael's a catalyst to help high achievers actually achieve their goals. That's why I'm bringing them in. Every time I talk with them, I get new insights, even if we're just having a kind of a random conversation. He's a deep thinker, and he'll give us some really good questions to think about. So when you set and achieve your goals, you will engage your learners, tackle boredom, and transform your classrooms. Go lead inspired. Thank you for listening to this episode of the PBL Simplified Podcast. Would you help us achieve our vision of 51 by 2051? One small step you can take to help us out is to leave a review of the PBL Simplified Podcast. Scroll down to the bottom of our show page, select a star rating, and leave a review. Your review helps others find this podcast. When you leave a review, the next visionary leader will see your words and join us. Thank you for leading inspired.